And it didn't form until 3 or 4 years into the process. And that's important to understand also as allies. It's like organizations need time to develop, especially organizations working with affected people, membership-based groups. They need to develop. Bringing random folks in, especially privileged folks, can violate the integrity of an organization. Really easy. Privileged folks can bring a lot of stuff. They can get really excited about something, they can commit to a lot of stuff, and then 3 months later they lose interest. And they go somewhere else. Right? Because they're not living that day to day. So you have to, yeah, it takes time, right? You don't want to violate the integrity. And like with that responsibility, United Workers, as you saw, stuff was pre-planned, stuff years in advance, right? And I know for me, especially as a young person, like I didn't think about that stuff. I didn't realize that kind of stuff. I was just doing protest to protest and like, oh, I want to do an event about this, and we do an event or whatever. And then I come into an organization that's like, in 4 years, we're going to have this retreat. And I was like, oh. Yeah. So what we did is we went out and we formed this organization. It turned into what we first called SWAG, Stadium Worker Allied Group. And the goal of my work was like take people who are active in different issues around the city, and it's mostly folks with privilege. And how do we get these folks, right? Because there are other organizations, especially poor people's organizations around the city, who are already doing some work with the United Workers. There's the Algebra Project, the SMEAC, the State of Middle East Action Committee, a Housing Tenant Group in East Baltimore. And there's some of these organizations, CASA. And then how do you get folks coming from a privileged background and used to sort of like fun, romanticized versions of politics? How do you make hard, sometimes unexciting, sometimes exciting, but the excitement comes through the hard work. How do you get folks excited about hard, real work, face-to-face stuff that's not that glorious, right? The real stuff, right? How do you get folks excited about that? And it's a cultural question. It's like we have to change that form of political culture that's only excited about stuff that seems fun and this and this and this. And we have to make the real hard work fun. We have to make the real hard work the thing that gets you excited and pumped up. So we try to develop that. And one of the problems that we ran into, we did stuff, we went and we talked to schools, we went and we flyed on the trains, we covered the city in leaflets. We did some actions, we did some risky things where we fly outside the stadium until the police came in. Didn't get arrested, but just made us think so they heard about it upstairs in the office and whatnot. We did fail in like developing a story around us as allies. Like, what's our story? Who are we? Why are we involved? Well, it's like, because you got to mobilize other people, and if you don't have your identity as a group, then who are you? Sorry, I'm blowing through some of this stuff. But so, like, good musicians get heard about through word of mouth, right? Good concerts get heard about through word of mouth. More than advertising, more than this. People spread the word, right? So you want to build a political movement. You want to build folks as supporters around something. That spreads through word of mouth as well. You can hand out as many flyers as you want, but like you got to excite people about it. Folks have to understand why this is so awesome, and that's another reason that you need to do that hard work. And the big question that came up, I know for me as an individual coming from like an anarchist and anti-authoritarian background, as a young person, and then I'm in this organization that follows the lead of the poor, right? And how do you rectify that? Like, how do you mobilize folks who come at it with, and it is like I would say it's a fairly privileged notion of what it means to be anti-authoritarian and democratic. Because democracy doesn't just mean like everyone talks for as long as they want, right? Sometimes it means privileged people step back, right? And support. It's not that they don't put their word in or whatever, but like you support the lead. In United Workers, we follow the lead of the poor. We don't follow blindly. We're not like obeying somebody, but you're respecting it. You're understanding that. And so privilege is a hierarchy too, right? So like what's it look like when you're working in an organization that's multi-class? And what are the different roles and how do you respect each other and understand that? And that's something that you deal with all the time. So, I gotta be really brief. I guess the last thing that I really want to talk about is the effect, not only the effect that I was mentioned earlier, that the allies of the United Workers and involved in this, and I've also been organized with United Workers, but I've been an ally for most of it. The effect that had on the organization in sort of like, so folks fight on their own a lot of places. You're fighting on your own. You're only fighting with poor workers. You're only fighting with your tenants and your neighbors. You're only fighting with other students and this and this and this. And then some other folks come along. You're a worker and you're fighting for a living wage, and then some students come along who are fighting for education justice. That validates your struggle, and it validates theirs. Some tenants come and they're like, we're fighting gentrification. We're fighting Johns Hopkins, taking all our land. That validates everybody's struggle even more. More folks come and they're like, look, I do a lot of work on different issues. I'm interested, I want to help because what you're doing is awesome. And that validates. And then a preacher comes and talks about Martin Luther King Jr. and how you're living the legacy, and that validates the struggle. So there's all these different things that build a psychological validation of what folks are doing, and that helps. It's the next best thing to a victory in terms of like developing leaders and whatnot. So the effect that that had just like on the work of the United Workers, and then on the other side, the work that the United Workers and some of the other folks in Baltimore, the Algebra Project, to name one, have that effect that that's had on the privileged activist community in Baltimore is to me is really remarkable, because for me, like, I've gone to a lot of cities where folks my age, young white dudes like me, are doing stuff that's pretty disconnected from poor people. It's pretty disconnected from affected people in general, and it's pretty disconnected from strategy, from some sort of long-term practical goal, and therefore pretty disconnected from reality, right? And from actually achieving the goals that we talk about we want to achieve or that we wear on our shirts, but are you actually doing something about it? And so the connection there is so important, because there are a ton of privileged folks in our society. There's a ton of non-privileged folks in our society, and oppressed people. You got to get out of it together, because one's not going to fight without the other. Not only because that doesn't seem like the right thing, but it's just not going to work, because there's a lot of people that got to move to the right place. So, yeah, I mean, that's what I'll touch on. Maybe you can answer questions or talk later, but yeah, so, thanks.